Raising the Bets is brought to you by the Star Quest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give. You're listening to Raising the Bets. We're a Catholic couple raising 5 kids outside of Boston. Join us as we share the joys and challenges of marriage, homeschool, and our adventures near and far as we make sense of the world and experience the best parts of our culture. I'm Don Bettinelli.
And I'm Melanie Bettinelli.
So, Melanie, last we talked on the podcast, we were all sick from COVID, apparently, as best we knew. At least right. Bella was, and presumably the rest of us, too.
It would be weird if we all had 2 different bugs. I suppose
yes.
It's not impossible, but...
Yes, and...
chances are.
I lost my sense of taste and smell for a bit. Thankfully, for not very long. A couple days.
Yes.
That was truly weird.
We've had friends who've lost their senses of taste and smell for months.
Months, and still don't have them back, even.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that was truly weird. And I think did we mention it last time? Like, I forget now. But you were cooking... We were cooking something...
No, this was this week.
Okay, what was I cooking? I was cooking soup.
You were cooking soup,
and I'm like,
couldn't taste it.
Yeah, well, I was like, okay, I want to taste it to see how, if it's seasoned enough. And I'm like, oh, right. Melanie.
I had to come in and season the soup. It was super bland.
Well, I mean, I hadn't seasoned it yet.
I know.
It was super bland.
It was super bland.
And I had no sense of taste.
Yeah, also, I made a really spicy peanut sauce the other night, and you couldn't taste it at all. I was so proud.
I'm very disappointed I couldn't taste it.
It was the perfect peanut sauce, like the perfect balance of spicy, sweet, sour, salty. Yeah. I was so proud of it, and you couldn't taste a bit of it.
In the stir fry, I know. I'm still annoyed because you will never make it the same way again.
No, I never make it twice the same way.
Yeah,
I'll never achieve that perfection of peanut sauce.
Anyway, yeah. So. Since then, actually, it sounds like I'm sicker now than I am. As anyone who's listened to the podcast for any length of time knows, that when I get a cold, anything, the cough and the congestion stay with me for weeks. There's an infamous story from when I was producer of The Good Catholic Life, which is a local Catholic radio program here in Boston that used to be on. Lena Rulli was on it at the time. And the production board was in the same room in the studio, and I was sick. I had to cough, and there was no way to block my cough. The entire interview, they kept hearing me cough, and there they are the next day on the Catholic Guy show, making fun of me for coughing throughout the interview. That's okay. I got it back on them. I don't subscribe to SiriusXM or listen to the Catholic Guy show.
Okay.
I don't bear a grudge or anything. So, but mostly, I think I got it the worst. And even I didn't have it that bad.
You, Bella, and Ben all were kind of...
Well, but I was sick for a few days. I'd say sick for 3 or 4 days where I had congestion, even the shortness of breath.
So were Bella and Ben.
Yeah, but they got over it really quick. Like Ben was like, snap your fingers when he's done. He was sick and then he was done. It seemed like that.
You weren't paying attention. He was sick at least as long as you were.
Okay. Well, they all seemed to get over it quicker anyway, and they were done. I mean, they got sick before I did, so
right.
They were done before. We had mentioned last time that we had a camping trip for the Scouts. You were going to be going on your trip to New Orleans, and we had to cancel everything because, of course, we can't go anywhere when we're sick.
Yeah.
Excuse me. But
sad about that.
Yes. But we did have Lucy's birthday, where Lucy's birthday was on Monday, and we ordered in pho because Lucy's every year for her birthday she wants to go to her favorite pho restaurant, and we couldn't do that, but we ordered it in, and that was good. It was really good, actually. Good pho.
It was good.
Pho is better at the place because it comes to piping hot and really good, like that. But you heat it up in the microwave, and it's still pretty hot, and it's good for when you get a cold. It's the best thing for when you're not feeling well.
It is.
And then so we gave her a Kindle She got her very own Kindle.
She was so excited to get the Kindle.
We'd been talking about it. Everyone else has a Kindle. Nearly everyone. Ben doesn't, but he listens to audiobooks on his phone and that sort of thing. But she'd been borrowing Anthony's Kindle for ages.
And I think Bella's Kindle once or twice, too, to read books that all the other kids were reading on Kindle.
Right. And now she can finally read all those books that they'd been reading that we only had as ebooks or that they were getting out from the library in overdrive and that sort of thing. So that's nice. And she's been in that, like, she stays up late, but she's like a night owl.
She's like, oh my gosh, she's like at 11 o'clock. I have to, her older sisters are telling her, turn off the light and go to bed. And I have to say, go to bed.
Once in a while, I find her sitting in the hall reading.
She's not quite done with the chapter when they make her turn off the light.
Yes. She's funny. And then she got a pocket knife because she has her Scout Whitland chip. And what else did we get her? Some other little things. The books, right? It's hard to keep track because there's Christmas gifts, Epiphany gifts, and birthday gifts for her all that come around the same time. And so it's hard to keep track of which one's for which.
She had the Kindle, the pocket knife. My parents gave her some pajamas and
she got the Grogu pajamas. Yep.
Gosh.
Yeah. I forget.
I don't know.
Like I said,
my brain
it's
is
hard to keep track.
Yeah.
Anyway, so we had that, and then later this week we had a snowstorm. We had our first snowstorm of the year
on Friday.
Yeah, and we had not had even an inch of snow yet this year, which was one of the latest we ever had snow, like an inch of snow in Boston. It was like the 5th latest it's ever been, or something crazy like that. Anyway, we got a foot of snow.
It was a nice, good, thick snowstorm.
Yeah, so it was not wet, which means it was light and fluffy and easier to shovel, which is good.
Because I did a lot of the shoveling.
Well, I was going to mention that. It came in the mostly in the morning, and it was perfect timing. There wasn't very windy, it wasn't icing, so there wasn't a lot of power outages. It was like a perfect snowstorm. But also, yeah, I was busy working. I was going to go shovel and snowblow after I was done, but the kids got out there before I did, and they started shoveling, Ben especially. And then you got out there and you started shoveling.
Yeah, I was just going to clear out the cars. And in the past, I've always been like, I can do a little bit and then I'm winded. And also, before my hernia surgeries, I really couldn't do much shoveling. But last fall, I got my second hernia repaired. And
in fall 2020. Yep.
And
in this fall,
I spent most of the fall doing daily walks on the beach.
Yep.
And living in rental houses that had stairs, so running up and down stairs all day,
going up and down hills. Yep.
And I'm probably in better shape than I've been in for years.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, oh, I'll just do a little bit. I'll do a little bit more. I'll stop when I get tired. Eventually, the driveway was shoveled and I still had energy, so I went for a walk around the block with the kids.
And then once I finally got work done, I went out there and just did some cleanup. Get some of the edges and clean out a spot for the barrels on the side of the road and that sort of thing. And I even did the sidewalk, which I never do because you guys had done it. Yeah, it was nice. It was nice that you could do that. It was nice that the kids did that. I saw Paul Goyette had posted a picture of his son Joseph doing the snowblower for the first time.
Uh-huh.
I'm not quite sure if I'm ready to have one of the kids do snowblower yet, but we'll get there.
Eventually.
Snowblower is dangerous. It's just even more, it's like more so than the lawnmower, because at least the blade on the lawnmower is on the ground, whereas the blade on the snowblower is facing outward. So, yeah, we'll wait on that. But so that was good. And then the next day, on Saturday, it was a beautiful day, sunny, not too cold. I mean, it was chilly. It was
in the 20s, but it wasn't. But it felt warmer.
Yeah. So we decided to go for a walk in the woods. We went up for a hike.
I decided.
You decided that that we were all going.
I decided that the family was going to take a family hike, and those who dissented were told that they didn't have a choice.
Right.
So we did. We went for a hike in the town forest. We didn't go for a very long hike.
Right. And the town forest is, down the street. It's not that far away, the entrance to it. So, yeah, we drove the van over and we just hiked in. someone had already broken the trail. I mean, there were people had already hiked.
Oh yeah, I figured people go there daily. So
yeah.
But there was a good amount of fluffy snow, and it while the trail had been broken, there was a lot of.
There was still plenty of snow. Yeah.
Snow on the trail. I love walking through the woods on a snowy day. It's just so
especially right after a snowstorm.
Right before it's all super trampled and muddy and stuff.
And when there's still snow in the tree branches.
Yeah, it's so beautiful. It's so quiet. It's so peaceful. Of course, the kids all like play war games on the trail, so it's sort of peaceful.
I'm Hawkeye. I have a bow. I'm ambush.
Lord of the Rings. The orcs are chasing us.
Yep.
Yeah, it was good. We
about 2/3 of a mile in, Ben got tired, and so we had to walk back. I had to go back with him early, but you guys kept going on.
Yep,
that was good. You guys got to all the way out to the border with the next town. That's the sort of the delineating point. There's a open area where the high power electric lines go, and that's sort of the border with the next town. I'm pretty sure that's the Braintree line.
I think so. Yeah. Because on the other side is the Braintree Town Forest. So there's a continuation of forest, but there's a break for the power lines. It's really beautiful. There's a little pond there, which was all iced over.
Yep. It's like we've said before, there's plenty of trails in those woods, which is really nice. It's not in all trails. The app that I use, it's really annoying. I'm gonna put them in there. I'm gonna see if there's a way to put those trails in all trails, because I like to keep track on all trails.
Right.
So that was nice. That was good. And then, then we came back and hot drinks, and it was nice. It was a really nice opportunity to get outside, because we haven't been getting outside enough because of the weather, and it's just been blah.
There's something. A snowy day can be even colder than the days before, but there's something about the snow that just impels you outside. We have been stuck inside, housebound for weeks. Mm-hmm. I have not wanted to go outside. I have not wanted to go for a walk, and yet put some snow on the ground, and I'm out there.
Well, it's funny. Last year, this weekend, we went to Ames Knoll.
Yep.
We that doesn't seem like that long ago, but there was no snow then, but it was a warmish day.
Yeah. It was really nice.
The pond was frozen over. I remember that.
We were throwing rocks
and having it make that weird noise.
Love that.
Yeah, that was really cool. So yeah, we do like to take winter walks.
It's just this December has been kind of gray and cold and wet and just not.
Well, and then we've been consumed with just having to unpack and all the stuff. It was just a crazy time. So it's nice to get back outside again. It would be nice if we were by the ocean, but can't have everything, I suppose.
Yeah, we were spoiled.
So one thing I want to talk about quickly before we get into the rest of what we got on the agenda is something I discovered on Twitter this week, which was really cool. And this might be maybe something I should have put into what we were reading and watching. But there's this artist. She's I think she must be of Chinese ancestry. She's I think like one of her parents is Chinese and one of her parents is European heritage. And she's a Lord of the Rings fan, and she's an artist, and she decided to do a bunch of artwork recasting Lord of the Rings as a Chinese setting. And it was really cool. I'll put a link to my Facebook post of her artwork, I could link to her Twitter feed too. And I think she said she'd pin the first tweet at the top of her feed. You can find it there. I think that's what I'll do. And it's really cool because, like, reinterpreting the characters and the places. So, for example, the Rohirrim are the horse people of Lord of the Rings in Middle Earth. So she cast them as Mongolians, and so she redrew them with a Mongolian style, not exactly Mongolian, or Bag End as a Chinese courtyard style house,
which was kind of fascinating because, like, it's kind of partially buried in the hill, but it's a courtyard style house.
Right.
With a big open space in the middle of it.
Right.
Very different, but beautiful, just gorgeous, very detailed.
Yeah. Very, like, you look at it and go, this should be a graphic novel. Like, someone should pay her to do a graphic novel of Lord of the Rings.
I would buy it
as a Chinese, in the Chinese style.
I would totally buy that.
Right.
Or even just an illustrated version of Lord of the Rings.
Yes. Yeah. Even just the regular text, but these are the illustrations. Yes. What was the other thing? Oh, lembas bread, the elven bread that is Tolkien saw as a sort of analog to the Eucharist, but as mooncakes, Chinese mooncakes, which have a similar festive feel to them. I guess they have they're special. They're very special
for the Chinese New Year.
Yeah. It was really neat, and just check it out if you're a fan of the Lord of the Rings at all, or of art. It would be definitely something worth checking out. All right, so let's talk about food. You already mentioned the stir fry, the peanut sauce that you made for the stir fry. Tonight we made a sweet and sour pork dish.
I love sweet and sour. It is one of my favorites. It's a much more time-consuming recipe because you have to make separately a marinade, a sauce, and
a batter.
And you have to cook everything. Like you cook down the marinade. I mean, you cook down the sauce, and you have to fry the pork, and then you have to stir fry the vegetables. But it's so
worth
good.
it.
Oh, I love sweet and sour. The funny thing is, my mom used to make sweet and sour pork a lot when I was a kid. I mean, a lot, like maybe a couple times a year. But it was one of her standard dishes that she loved to make. And as a kid, I did not like sweet and sour sauce at all. But I loved the fried pork. So I would always make my mom leave a batch of the fried pork without sauce. And I would just eat those little fried pork goodies.
Because they're so crunchy.
So crunchy, so good. Oh, I love them.
I know. I almost don't want to put the sauce on the pork. Maybe I would put the sauce just on the vegetables and then let the pork be added to it, and so they stay crunchy. Because, yeah, I do like that crunchiness. So for veggies, like the recipe we were looking at, it had like bell pepper and scallions or something as the veggies. So we went further. We had bell pepper, poblano pepper, because I had poblano in the fridge, celery, carrot, mushrooms, and onions.
Yeah, I always like to add carrots and mushrooms and onions to my sweet and sour. And if we have broccoli, zucchini, green beans, those are all really good in a sweet and sour sauce too. I usually find I like Chinese food, but I usually find that most restaurant Chinese food is way too skimpy on the vegetables for my taste. Like I much more prefer like Thai or Vietnamese style just for the amounts
volume
of vegetables.
Yeah.
And I know in traditional Chinese cooking, you have separate vegetable and meat dishes. They're usually not cooked together in the same dish, but they're served together at the same meal. But I find that the way most Americans order from Chinese food restaurants, including us, is that we just order like meat dishes and there's like not nearly enough veggies for my taste.
Right. So we added all the veggies. So and then the sauce has what would you have like
the sauce uses the standard like ketchup, brown sugar, rice vinegar.
That's where you get your sour.
Right. I like to add the Worcestershire sauce for the tang. And I added a little bit of black bean sauce and a little bit of oyster sauce and some soy sauce. Like I wanted those more umami dark notes. And then I added a couple teaspoons of the Thai chili garlic sauce for some
punch,
some spicy punch.
Yep. And then brown sugar for the sweetness.
Brown sugar, pineapple juice, and the ketchup too. The ketchup has a lot of sugar in it.
Yeah.
So between those, I did find in the final dish the balance was a little bit off, and it was a little bit too much on the sour side and not quite sweet enough.
Right. So the first time we made this, we thought it was too sweet. And I think now that I think about it, we forgot the cooking the sauce step in the first time we made this. And so the sauce was both thinner, but also sweeter, because when you cook it, it cooks some of the sweetness out. And so this time I remembered, we need to cook it. So I did cook it. So it was a lot thicker.
But I also followed the notes that said it was too sweet. So I cut back on the sugar.
Right. So you cut back. So next time, just do the regular amount of sugar, because that will get the balance back where it's supposed to be. But we need to remember to cook the sauce. And then the batter, cornstarch, flour,
egg whites, baking soda, and salt.
Yeah. And it's a really good batter. I
love that batter so much.
It makes a really nice crunch. I just cooked it in regular canola oil. So you marinate the pork first, or chicken. You can do this with chicken too.
You marinate the meat with soy sauce, rice wine vinegar, and a little bit of cornstarch. But the batter also had oil, a little bit of oil too.
Yeah. So no fear, don't start taking notes. I'm going to put a link in the show notes to the recipe that we worked from. It's not exactly, but it's very close to
I was looking at a couple different recipes when I was making the sauce, so I kind of improvised a bit.
Yeah, I mean, you can improvise with the sauce a little bit, but you can see the techniques in the both the batter and the marinade were pretty much from this recipe. And then then I cook up the pork and put the pork, marinate that for 30 minutes. And then put it in the batter and then drop them in batches into the hot oil at 375. Cook them for a few minutes, put them aside on some paper towels. Then when they're all done, put them all back in for 30 seconds. Get that second fry on.
You know, so many fried foods do so much better with that second fry.
Yeah.
Like
there's something that happens in the coating when it
gets reheated.
When it's cooked, taken out, and then put back in. Yeah, something interesting happens that makes it even crunchier.
I'd love to know more about the science of that. Like, why is it more crunchy when it cools and then you refry it?
It's the same thing with like some French fry recipes. They want you to refry them. Yeah, it's onion
rings too. I've seen onion ring recipes that have you fry them twice.
Fried chicken recipes, same thing. Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, that bears some research. And then serve it with some rice. It was good. Everybody liked it, pretty much, except for Ben. Ben didn't want it, but
yeah, he even try a bite? I don't think he did.
I'm not sure he even tried a bite. He just decided to have rice and ramen.
Yeah, he didn't even eat much of the ramen.
Well, he said it tasted funny, so
I'm wondering if he has a little bit of the COVID's making things taste funny too.
Yeah, he's been complaining about have weird smells and weird tastes randomly. Bella too.
Yeah.
So I'd be curious. So yeah, sweet sour pork. It's yum. We also had creamy lemon chicken this week, which we've done before. We've talked about that, and that was really good.
Anthony referred to it as chicken stroganoff, which actually not too far off. I mean, it's very similar to my beef stroganoff recipe, although stroganoff doesn't have lemon in it,
right?
Whereas the chicken does. But similar technique, similar flavor profile.
Hey, if it gets him to eat it.
And this is the first time, he doesn't usually eat my lemony chicken dishes. So I was happy that he was trying it and eating it and liking it.
Yep. And you also made king cake this week.
I did. It was kind of a disappointment. I don't know if I didn't need it enough or it rose too long on the first rise, but it didn't braid well. Like the strands kept breaking and I just got impatient and I ended up kind of kludging it together. But the texture was too dry. It was too dense and it looked lumpy instead of looking smooth. And I don't know. I wasn't feeling great. I didn't make it in time for Epiphany. I made it like on Friday.
Right.
Or was it Thursday? I don't know.
No, I mean you did make it in time for the celebration of Epiphany, but you made it I think in time for the 6th. I think.
No, I think I made it on the 7th.
Okay.
Anyway.
Well, in any case.
It was okay. It wasn't my best effort. C'est la vie. You win some, you lose some.
Sure. So let's talk about some things we've been watching. We watched Captain America Winter Soldier today in our continuing effort to watch the Marvel movies with the kids. And that went well. I think they all enjoyed it. It's a much more serious movie than some of the others.
I think it's the darkest one we've watched so far.
Yes. Yeah, I mean there are some moments or lines of humor, but it is very much it ends on a dark note, with Hydra having come out of the shadows and S.H.I.E.L.D. out of business, and
it does end on a pretty dark note, and that unfortunately keeps going
right
darker.
Once you get to Civil War, it gets even darker and more grim. And I mean, then the other Endgame and Infinity War.
But there's some fun movies in between. like Guardians of the Galaxy.
That's next on the list.
Which is next on the list. And Ant-Man is fun.
Ant-Man, yeah. Yeah, so it'll be Guardians, Ant-Man, then Ultron.
Ultron's kind of dark, too.
Yeah. Then from Ultron to Civil War. And then I think Spider-Man is after that. The first Spider-Man.
Which I still haven't seen.
Oh, okay, yeah. So that'll be fun. And then, so Winter Soldier, I think a lot of people say that's the best Marvel movie. Although I'm not sure if people still say that after the last two Avengers, but certainly it's one of the better ones. The whole Bucky reveal was fun.
Yeah.
They kept wondering, who is the Winter Soldier? Who is the Winter Soldier? And then when it's Bucky, they're like, what?
Yeah, that was pretty intense. Everyone liked Falcon a lot.
Yes, Falcon is a star. And Dr. Zoloft, as Anthony called him. Yeah, he's so mellow. And it was good. It was good. And then you've been watching, since you're now on a Marvel kick, you've decided to pick up the old series, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
I have. And it's been fun. I've really enjoyed it. I remember like watching parts of a couple of episodes like over your shoulder sort of while you were watching them. My mom had said a few months ago that she had been watching the series and really enjoyed it. And she really thought she'd tried to watch it earlier before she'd watched all the Marvel movies and she really didn't get into it. And she said, but now that she's watched all the Marvel movies, she likes it better. And so I thought was a pretty good endorsement.
I think it's a good point. You know, when I first watched it through, trying to balance what's going on in the TV series against the movies as they were coming out, and they were doing something really difficult then, which was trying to time what happens in a TV series with movie releases.
Right.
You know, because they were supposed to all be continuous. I think now they've kind of said that it's a different continuity that's no longer canon. It's like a different timeline, maybe. So
that would, I might be annoyed when we get to that point.
Yeah, as things have diverged. But in general, they watching it, having seen all the movies, I think actually would be better now.
Yeah, I've watched about half of season 1, I guess, and so far I'm really enjoying it. It's fun, good action, good characters, and
Coulson's the best.
Coulson is good. I like Coulson.
He's the best character. Although Skye is good. It develops in interesting ways through the series.
Yeah, I mean, I see that there's a lot of room for the characters to grow and develop, and I'm looking forward to seeing what happens.
Mm-hmm. So we also watched the latest episode 2 of Book of Boba.
Yes.
And episode 1 and 2 of Book of Boba sort of form a continuous whole.
Yeah, I felt like episode 1 was kind of short. It was almost like they thought episode 2 was, the first episode was too long, and so they cut it into 2 parts.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of had a feeling like they wanted to be one story, and they didn't exactly want to be.
I mean, the whole series is one story.
Right. But the first episode was way too short.
It was only half an hour.
Right. The second one was a full hour, and I thought it
told it really develops the character of Boba Fett, but it also develops the Tusken people in very interesting ways. And there's a very mosaic story going on here. Like Moses showing up at the Sheik of Midian's hut after being cast out of from Pharaoh's, from Egypt, saving them at the water well, saving the daughters of the Sheik, the burning bush, there's just all of these different, being given a mission to protect and to guide and to, across the desert. It is kind of remarkable how many elements of like the story of Moses you could find in it. I don't, it's probably not intentional per se on the scriptwriters, but the story is such an indelible part of our culture that it comes out in storytelling. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. When you try to tell a story of a certain kind, those elements come out.
It's definitely hitting a lot of archetypal notes. I was mostly noticing a lot of the hero's journey. the sort of symbolic rebirth from the Sarlacc pit, and the initiation of the warrior. There's a lot of really interesting things. I think what they're doing, or what they seem to be doing, with Boba taking over Jabba's empire, looks like they're doing something interesting with the character, and I'm not exactly sure where they're heading with that, and I'm kind of intrigued.
It almost feels like a redemptive arc. He's trying to redeem his former life.
Yeah, and I don't know that that's necessarily where they're going with it. I feel like I don't know, and I like that feeling of not knowing, like what's going on here exactly? What kind of story are we watching? It kind of feels like a Western.
Yes, it's very much a Western. You have the train heist, you have all that sort of stuff.
But The Mandalorian also had a lot of that Western feel to it. There's a little bit of the sort of Japanese Ronin story, which The Mandalorian also had elements of.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the Kurosawa cowboy Western films.
Exactly. Yeah. So we've got a lot of that, which is very Star Wars. I mean, Star Wars has always had that kind of Western and samurai feel to it.
I mean, this could be you'd only have to change a few things for this to be a Clint Eastwood spaghetti Western. Right. You know, Clint Eastwood instead of Boba, the Man with No Name, instead of Tuscans, it'd be Native Americans. I mean, it would not take much to turn this into an old-fashioned Italian Sergio Leone Western.
Right. And I think I really like that about it, but I also feel like maybe there's something else going on too.
There's still a Star Wars element to it.
Right. And we're hitting a lot of the Star Wars notes that are really fun. And there's a lot of like callbacks to past history. Boba taking over Jabba's palace.
Yep.
There's a lot of echoes there. I mean, that set, that place has seen some action. And so when we see him interacting there, we get those reminders of the past.
There's also plenty of fan service for fans like me, Star Wars fans like me. Like at one point he goes to a bar where a swoop gang, a Star Wars biker gang, are breaking up the place, and it's Tosche Station. And if you remember Star Wars: A New Hope, Luke wanted to go to Tosche Station to hang out with his friends, in Anchorhead, and there were deleted scenes filmed of him at Tosche Station seeing his friend Biggs. That if you're a fan, you're a deep fan, you've seen those online, and they recreated those sets to make this bar. And it was pretty awesome.
That's a lot more deep fan than I am. One of the things I appreciate about it is that while it has those notes, you can watch it.
Oh, you don't need to know any.
And you don't need to know any of that, and you're not really missing out in terms of plot development. They managed the balance of calling up moments which will excite the fans, but not confuse the people who aren't in the know.
Right. You don't really need to even know much about Star Wars to get it.
I think you could probably watch this as a space Western without really knowing anything about Star Wars at all and still enjoy the story.
Mm-hmm. Also, the coolest new character is the Wookiee that shows up, Black Krrsantan, who is a character out of the comics, the Star Wars comics, but he's like an evil Wookiee who works for the Hutts. And like he shows up on screen and you're like, oh my. Who
is this guy?
That is an intimidating looking character. I mean, pretty wild. So I'm looking forward to seeing more of that. It's really good. If you get a chance to watch it, definitely. Yeah. Then speaking of Star Wars, you finished your reread of the Thrawn trilogies, the 2 trilogies.
I did. Actually, I read the third book in the prequel trilogy, and then I read the first 3 books in the series
about Thrawn in service to the Empire.
Right. I didn't go back and reread the prequel trilogy, which I probably will do at some point, but that was a little bit more than I wanted to do right now.
Yeah.
But the third book ends where Thrawn begins.
Right.
And so it really it was just crying for a reread. I have to say that rereading it, I am left really, really, really crossing my fingers, holding my breath, and praying that Thrawn shows up in the Ahsoka series. Because he's got more story that needs to be told. What happened to Thrawn and Ezra at the end of Rebels? I have to know.
Right.
I'm dying to know.
And I've started that last book, the Thrawn book that came out that you guys have all read. So I just started reading that now because I've finished the book I was reading.
Yeah, I'm sort of left with what should I read next? I picked up a few books when I was unpacking books from the kids' shelves of things that I was like, oh yeah, I gave this to the kids and I've never actually read it myself. I should read that. But nothing's really grabbing me right now. So I'm just kind of paging through things and wondering what to do with myself.
So I've, as I mentioned, I finished a book. So I finished the latest book in the Wearing the Cape series. And I've mentioned the other books before, although it's been a while since the last one came out.
Right.
So Wearing the Cape is a series written, self-published by this guy, Marion Harmon, and it imagines a world where the event happened. And the event was people had breakthrough powers. You hear breakthroughs now with the COVID, but this was breakthrough superpowers.
It's a superpower.
It's a super
universe.
Yes, a superhero universe. And what happens is people end up in stressful situations, like life-threatening or whatever, and a superpower will manifest in some way, whether for ill or for good. They could become a supervillain, they could become a superhero, and it's all kinds of superpowers.
Right, because the initial event was like a moment where everybody in the world blacked out for a period of time, right?
Yes, there was a universal blackout.
Like everyone, like almost
lost 2 minutes.
Almost as if, to borrow from the Marvel universe, which didn't exist when Harmon wrote this, almost as if the snap had taken everyone out, but only for 2 minutes.
Actually, the snap had happened in the comic books, so that might have been
an inspiration,
right? But there have been other things that have had, universal blackout things. There was a TV series not long ago that had that too, and so it was as if the universe rebooted or something. And these powers can manifest as magic. They can manifest as Superman-like. They can manifest as
gods.
People
literally
think that they manifest as a Roman god or
a Japanese god,
or kame spirits, or they manifest in there's one character who is Ozma of Oz, the Princess of Oz, and
she really 100% truly really believes that she is Ozma of Oz, and she has all of Ozma's powers that she has in the books.
And Oz exists, like they visit Oz.
Yes. And then there's a character who's a vampire, who really truly has all of the characteristics and attributes of a vampire, but she did not have them before her breakthrough.
Right. And what's fascinating about the series of books is that Harmon has thought through implications, like the political implications, the
socioeconomic,
right, the global politics of what would happen, and how would we organize our society, like superheroes fighting crime. Well, they have to be deputized in some way, like you can't just go be a vigilante. So they've figured out a way to have letters of marque, or that they become technically part of the National Guard and work under the authority of the governor of the state, and they have legal limitations placed on them, and all these very interesting implications that he works through. There's a group called Heroes Without Borders, like Doctors Without Borders, but they're heroes that go to war zones and whatever and help refugees and help people. You think, oh, superheroes, it would be great to have superheroes. Sure, but they're also supervillains, and so that sort of bad stuff happens even worse. So in the net of things, maybe it's not better that they have these things. So it's a really interesting series. Sometimes I feel I get a little lost. I feel a little lost in his. I don't know whether it's a flaw in the writing or a flaw in the imagination, like in the just you've gone. Your imagination has gone beyond where I can grasp this.
I just feel like the last book of the series I read, I felt like I needed to go back and reread the whole series again, because I had just sort of lost continuity and I couldn't remember who characters were and what was going on.
There's so many characters, so many situations, so much lore that it can be hard to
But
keep
I feel
track
like
if
I
you're reading
can't-
over long periods of time, as opposed to if you read them one after another
Right.
right away.
I feel like I can't really judge until I go back and reread like
That's true.
how solid the storytelling is, because I feel like maybe they were kind of intended to read.
Well, this would be a good time to reread it, because this book I just finished called Joyeuse Garde. Joyeuse is a weapon that the main character gets.
Well,
A maul.
the fabled sword of Charlemagne.
Except it's not a sword; it's like more of a hammer. It's almost like Mjolnir. In any case, this book is the 9th book, and it's the final book of the arc of the series. Now he's going to continue to write in this world, this universe, but not necessarily from the same viewpoint characters.
Right.
The characters will be in it, but it'll be. He said he's going to be changing viewpoints. So this book almost feels like a wrap up of some threads, and it's like a series of novellas more than one continuous story, but it has a linking narrative between them.
So maybe it will be time to reread the whole series, and like, now that I know that there's a conclusion.
I think I do. I want to reread them myself, because there's so much good stuff. I mean, fun things like imagining if someone has a breakthrough and of themselves as Santa Claus. Like sometimes people manifest as something different than themselves because they have some sort of break and some sort of need to be different.
Yeah, I think his system of like so many people in the world all getting superpowers at once. I'm trying to put my finger on it, because it almost sounds like, well, how is this different from like Marvel? But
it feels different.
Yeah, there's a very different texture to the world building.
Yeah.
And the way he approaches the characters.
Yeah, it's really good. I mean, for whatever reason, it just feels different, and it's very interesting to me. The way things are, the things are thought through, the consequences of actions. If this is so, then this must be so. Then this must be so. He's also apparently a practicing Mormon, and that informs his writing. Although the main character is a practicing Catholic,
right?
Hope is Catholic, and it comes out, and he does an okay job with the Catholic stuff. Although you can kind of tell sometimes that he's not familiar from the inside out with Catholic, as in he's like a Catholic would write it differently. But
he's always respectful.
Yes.
And I feel like he's trying to
do the right thing.
He's trying to do the right thing. There's just a few things that are like inside baseball doesn't quite read.
It's almost tonal different. Her priest, the family priest, Father Nolan. It feels a little bit like I watched a movie with a Catholic priest sort of thing, as opposed to I actually know Catholic priests. There's a few elements like that, but it's like you said, it's respectful. He's trying to do it right.
And I always like to read Catholic characters in books. I find it very satisfying, even when they're written, maybe even especially when they're written by non-Catholics, because I'd like to see that
from their point of view. Yeah.
How do people see us? And I feel like, in general, he gets it right more than he gets it wrong.
Yeah.
Which is nice.
Yeah. So that's Joyeuse Garde, Wearing the Cape series from Francis Harmon. I knew I was going to say that. Right, Marion Harmon.
What?
Okay, so I thought it was going to, because Mark Harmon's the actor. This is, and Francis, I don't know who Francis is. Francis Marion? I think I was getting that confused. Marion Harmon. It's a dude. His name is Marion. Like John Wayne. If that wasn't confusing enough. So
I'm totally lost now.
That's fine. It'll be in the show notes. All right, let's talk some Catholic topics. It is as we talk, the Feast of the Baptism of the Lord, and the end of Christmas, sort of, although some people say it's Candlemas on February 2nd is the end of the Christmas season, but liturgically it's really the end of Christmas, because starting tomorrow it's ordinary time.
Right. We're going back to ordinary time.
And because we all had COVID this week, we could not go to Mass again, which is distressing. but we did watch the Catholic TV Mass, CatholicTV.com, and Father McDonald. I think it was McDonald. I want to say McDonald, who's
that totally sounds wrong to me, but I can't remember what his name was.
Yeah, I know him too, but he's a young priest who's at St. John Seminary, teaching at St. John Seminary, and he had the Mass. And one of the things he said in the homily was that, speaking of, as we bring Christmas to a close, Christmas comes at the darkest part of the year. This is the dark, at least in the Northern Hemisphere. But Christmas is about Christ bringing light. The star brings light. So Christ comes into the manger and he's the light to the people of Israel. And then on Epiphany, that light expands beyond the people of Israel to the people of the world, represented by the Magi. And, with baptism, it brings the light in the grace of the Holy Spirit even beyond that to all of us. And I like that idea, like just that expanding grace, that expanding light that grows. And as the days go on, the light grows meteorologically, I guess. Like sunsets gets later and sunrise is earlier, and our days are growing longer. And so as the time goes on with Christ in the world, the light grows. So I really like that. And then you mentioned something about with baptism in St. John the Baptist. You said you didn't have a well-rounded thought on it, but you had heard something about John's as he will increase while I decrease.
Right. The interesting thing is that John the Baptist is the only saint who has the feast of his birth on the calendar.
Right.
And so his birth is.
We know it because we are told that when Elizabeth was in her 6th month, Mary went to visit her.
Right. And so we celebrate the birth of John the Baptist as well as the passion of John the Baptist. Not the death, mind you, but the passion, which is very interesting. And his birth happens, of course, in the middle of summer. So 6 months before Jesus's birth. So literally, John the Baptist is born right around the summer solstice when the days are longest, and the days get less and less and less. Just like John says, I must decrease.
He's decreasing as Christ increases.
I always it makes me so happy the way the liturgical year and the calendar year, the seasons mesh so beautifully. Of course, in the Southern Hemisphere, it doesn't quite work so well. My friends in the Southern Hemisphere, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Actually, there was an article around Christmas about how do you celebrate Christmas in the Southern Hemisphere when all of the theological symbolism of the year is reversed. And they talked about how they can find meaning in it themselves, too.
Right.
Christ coming into the world as the light on the longest day of the year, etc.
Right. It works.
You can make it work.
But I love that the seasons and time itself is sanctified and made holy and brings us into the life of God, the life of the incarnation, the life of the church. It doesn't feel accidental. It feels meaningful. And that's something that's it brings me consolation.
Yeah. Yeah. So you said you also wanted to mention something else, a podcast you've been listening to that's about the Liturgy of the Hours.
Right. Speaking of consecrating time, a friend of mine recently recommended to me, she knows I pray the Liturgy of the Hours, and she said that she had stumbled across this podcast by a guy who, it turns out, actually lives in the Boston area. And his podcast is called Sing the Hours. And he's a fairly recent convert and fairly young guy. And he discerned, like, he discovered the Liturgy of the Hours actually before his conversion, and was just struck with how beautiful it was. And he was shocked when he went to go look that there was nobody who was doing a sung Liturgy of the Hours podcast. There are a few podcasts out there of Liturgy of the Hours, including the one that SQPN does, which is really nice. But he has training as a musician. And so he wanted to, as sort of his gift to the world, sing. He started doing the Sung podcast during the pandemic. I think he said he initially started singing just the Liturgy of the Hours via like Zoom or FaceTime, like with a relative who lived elsewhere.
Uh-huh.
And then he realized that he could record it and share it with the world. And it's beautiful. His settings for the Liturgy of the Hours are just really beautiful. He sings the hymns. He sings both in English, and sometimes he does parts of it in Latin as well. So it's just really moving, and it brings me a great sense of peace to follow along. He has his own website, which is called Sing the Hours, but he also posts his videos on YouTube, which are really nice with he does a beautiful background picture, and then it scrolls the words of the prayers so you can pray along, like sing along with him, which is really nice. And you can also subscribe to it via a podcast app, whatever you listen to your podcasts on. So that's worth checking out for a little change of pace. He doesn't do all the hours. He doesn't do all the hours, and he sometimes takes breaks. So he does most morning and evening prayer through most of the year. He took a nice long break at Christmas time, and he said he was planning to start back again in ordinary time. But, sometimes if there's not an hour recorded for the day, I'll just go back and listen to an old one. It's not like the liturgical proper for the day, but it's just so beautiful and peaceful and calming that it's prayer. And prayer is prayer, whether it's praying with the church in the formal liturgy or just praying as a devotional. God loves it when we pray, when we raise our hearts and minds to him at all. So don't be too picky.
So StarQuest has a podcast, Pray Station Portable, of the Liturgy of the Hours that Jeff Fist has been doing for 15 years or so. And there's one for every day. I mean, it's pretty much, he doesn't miss a day at all. But it's nice to have, it's just different. Like
it's nice to hear different voices. Like
it's also a different style. It's like it's the sung versus like Jeff does a good job, but it's nice to once in a while just to hear it sung. And, one is a prayer, like with Jeff, I can pray along with him, but with the Sing the Hours, I want to, in that case, like hear it, experience it by hearing someone else sing.
Right. And then there's also the Divine Office podcast, which sometimes does a little bit of singing and chanting. Mostly they just pray it. I don't always love their selections for
the hymns.
And some of the readers' voices are a little bit grating, but I just love to listen to Liturgy of the Hours while I cook or work. It's kind of a way of bringing my thoughts to God while I'm doing other things like cooking or folding laundry.
Right.
It's hard sometimes to get those hard stops in the day to like sit down and pray an entire hour of the liturgy. And I love the way podcasts let me sort of multitask, which, I mean, it sounds horrible. I'm multitasking God, but at the other hand, I'm bringing God into whatever work I'm already doing. So it's not really multitasking God. It's so much more as sanctifying the hours, the time that I'm spending on my family. There's like, reminds me of that old joke about the Jesuit and the Franciscan novices. One of them went and asked, can I smoke while I pray? And he was told absolutely not.
Right.
And then the other asked, can I pray while I smoke? Well, of course. Can I work while I'm praying the Liturgy of the Hours? Well, that's terrible. Can I pray the Liturgy of the Hours while I work? Well,
of course you can pray while you work.
You can pray while you work.
Yeah.
It's about, like, yes, you should have some time in the day when you sit down and do nothing but focus on God. But it's also good to bring God into whatever you're doing.
Right. That's true. True. All right, let's wrap it up there. I think that's a good place to end it. We'd like to take a moment to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create Raising the Bets, including Blaze B, Linda K, George C, Matthew S, and John K. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue Raising the Bets and all the shows at StarQuest. You can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. So that's it from us. We'd love to hear from you and get any feedback from you on what we've talked about. You can comment on the show at sqpn.com/bets. That's BETTS. Or the SQPN Facebook page, facebook.com/StarQuestMedia. Or send an email to bets@sqpn.com, BETTS. And I'll put links from our discussion in our show notes at sqpn.com. You can follow Raising the Bets in Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, TuneIn, your favorite podcast app, or at the StarQuest YouTube channel, where you should make sure to hit the bell to get notifications. Until next time, I'm Dom Bettinelli.
And I'm Melanie Bettinelli.
Thank you for listening to Raising the Bets on StarQuest.